So today I'm joined by Richard Blank, the Chief Executive Officer of Costa Rica's call center since 2008. Richard's journey began with a foundation in communication and Spanish from the University of Arizona, but took an unexpected turn when at just 27 years old, he relocated to Costa Rica to train over 5,000 employees for one of the largest call centers in San Jose. What started as a bold career move evolved into an entrepreneurial journey that has now seen him train over 10,000 bilingual telemarketers, combining his communication expertise with cultural intelligence to build a thriving international business. Beyond his professional achievements, of course, Richard's a great personality, but his passion is about giving back. He's a keynote speaker for Philadelphia's Abington High School and endows a scholarship each year for students planning to study world languages. Richard, welcome to the show.
I am so happy to be with you and your audience today, Jamilia. This is amazing. I love your show and the fact that I'm a guest. I'm hoping to shed some light and give some great advice.
Well, I'm hoping to listen to your story and learn from your story. And we always start, with the beginning. What really happened in the beginning and what caused you at 27, such a tender age, to make this bold move. Can you take us back then to there, and what really was the impetus for this decision?
Of course, it was building on momentum. So it wasn't just a split decision. It was one of those things that you felt comfortable with because you know the odds were in your favor. My favorite class in high school was Spanish. And unlike a lot of my friends that went to medical school or law school or followed in certain steps scholastically or through family pressure, I got past that guilt and I decided to believe in humanities. And by learning a second language, it just opened so many doors, and I could be the only one that could do it. And so I was getting so much positive reinforcement from the Latino community. So then fast forward to 27 years old, I had this 1 in a million opportunity to come to Costa Rica for just a couple months, teach English at a friend's call center. But you know when you get the chills, you know when the sixth sense kicks in, my Kentucky friend, you know when it's time to make that bold life decision, which if you don't do it, you're going to regret it for all of your days. And so I knew that this was my destiny. My intentions were honorable and it was done with good faith. So it was very easy for me to take that next step and to become an expatriate.
So you and I have that in common, that whole teaching English abroad as sort of like the door or the gateway to the experience. So I was 19, I went to China to teach English, but I mean, I can tell you that the feeling of being in that environment, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. You probably can remember a lot of details, can't you, about that first experience in teaching English abroad?
You know what? I saw it as extreme good faith. If you see someone that hits the gym, you admire their muscles, or someone that can play the violin or paint. But languages, if you have invested your time with the structure and the discipline and the years, when someone else comes to you as well, it's really just an exchange of ideas and as I say, good energy. And so for me, even though I have an accent because I'm from Philly, I just can't kick it. But my grammar, my vocabulary, learning the culture, asking clarification questions without embarrassment just to make sure I'd rather do the right thing than the wrong thing twice. And so I was able, like in football, to get a lot of first downs. I saw motion and I saw smiles when I would say something. It's a beautiful, as I mentioned before, when someone receives your energy and gives you that reinforcement, it just encouraged me to be more bold and to have more self-reliance and self-confidence. And slowly but surely, but it definitely adds upon itself. So that's what I felt. And it's a beautiful natural drug that you get just by feeling that sort of warmth and inclusion with other people. And so I know that all the world was a stage and that anytime I could just jump into this second language and enjoy myself.
Out of all the skills, so we talked about communication skills. I want to talk about leadership skills because that's another gripe that I have coming from the corporate space where you see people in leadership roles, and you know what I'm about to say. They are not leaders. No, you went from employee to entrepreneur and leader of this massive call center. What was your biggest leadership lesson? And how did that change your approach if it did?
Hands on, from the hockey coach that took their time to my Spanish teacher that balanced my bike to individuals that once again are there with you. So people can tell when someone's faking it a mile away. And so I think the market speaks. If nobody shows up, you remember hearing those stories about the Chuck E. Cheese birthday parties where the kids got 20 pizzas and no one shows up? Well, you have no friends, man. I mean, sometimes the market does speak. And so you could force somebody in a leadership position. You can scare people to having them being a leader, but there are certain organizations where people will be with you. I believe in circles. You might have a certain individual leading where it's going, but you're only as good as the person that is with you and vice versa. And so um, for me, I like there was a movie in the 70s called Slapshot. It was the Paul Newman movie. It was a great hockey movie. Anyway, Reggie was the coach, but also a player. And the generals that will sleep, eat, and fight with their people front line. And the ones that get their hands, those are the ones that become legends because the men see and they look to their left and they realize that person is in the rain with them and having the hardships with them. And so I don't want to be on this ivory tower. I know I've earned my position. I know that people might judge me on what happened on their last jobs with supervisors or bosses, and I say to them, not if, but when you own your own company, aren't you going to spend time with your people? But I was smart about it. I did a couple different tricks. I'm an old school gamer, so I collect pinball machines and air hockey tables. And so I've created a happy medium like recess in school. So instead of just being a pure boss, I get to hang out with people in an area to laugh and to joke and to compete. And then secondly, when people are coming in for interviews, besides giving me all the adjectives and playing the violin and singing the world, Jamilia, I'll ask you to turn your paper over and give me a couple paragraphs of a coming of age moment. I want to know when you beat up a bully or saved a kitten back in Kentucky. Why? So I can give you a nickname. I can see if you can zig and zag and be loosey goosey on the phone. So you're just not reading script. And when you're sad on a Wednesday when it's raining, I'm going to pick you up and tell you, I'm going to remind you when you were the champ, when you weren't the shy girl in your dancing class and you finally got in front of everybody and you did it for the first time and you shed some skin and you liberated yourself and you got to another level. And so those are the sort of things I'm exceptionally proud of people. I'm going to say it again, me today, you tomorrow. The greatest thing you could ever do is not have envy and just be proud of somebody. If they're having their moment, be there for them.
I love that. I love that. And so many points there. I mean, I think one of the things that you said that resonates me is this idea of you're winning, but you want them to win too. And so it creates this relationship where their win is your win and your win is their win. It's boosting each other up. And once again, that's something I think has been lost today in this. So in Dubai, I'll speak about Dubai because when the world thinks of Dubai, they think of yachts, they think of parties, they think of a very sort of materialistic, superficial place. And without throwing Dubai under the bus, I'll say there's some truth to that, right? I'm gonna keep it real. There is some truth to that. Everyone wants to have the best car, the best house, the best spouse, right? Everything. And I think that we lose in all of that. We lose this idea that I can win and you can win too. I could be fabulous. You could be fabulous too. Right. And so for people who want to come here and get started, I think your story is so important because the way that you're doing it is about it's a human centric approach. Right. And then you're also putting the people first who you're working with, and that's creating the company culture. So like, adding pinball machines and jukeboxes into your company culture it's fascinating, but it's part of who you are. And like you said, you don't have to keep a mask on.
That's right.
You can come from, a place of authenticity and show people that, and maybe that helps them be who they are too.
100%. It's like a feral cat. They see you, and little by little they approach you, and then finally you can give them some milk and pet them. And so they've just been bruised, and they've been in some environments where people were cancers, and they had terrible supervisors that just took away any sort of self-respect.
Richard, I have a tough question for you
Okay.
now that we've talked about the journey. Now here comes the tough stuff.
Yeah.
So one thing you and I both know is that entrepreneurship is really tough, right? So I can tell you, being just totally honest, just yesterday, 2 days ago, wasn't a good day. It wasn't a good day, and we go through these cycles of like mountains and lows and mountains and lows, and it changes you. I mean, I can't say that today I'm the same person that I was 4 years ago. I'm definitely not. What what happened in your journey? Was there any sort of pivotal moment where it really shook you to your core and really changed you?
Disappointment over anger. I had certain expectations in individuals that did not follow through. And so they might not have been as committed as I was, or things happen in life that are outside the office that I can't control. But the fact that I thought that my first employer would be with me for 20 years to get the watch and grow with the company, I'm foolish. I made some mistakes by bringing outside supervisors when I should have, back in the day, promoted more from within because of the people that had the respect for them. And so I made certain mistakes in regards to individuals where it was the right bus, just the wrong seat. And so that was my issue in the beginning, especially as we mentioned, being an expat, a guest here, where I needed some home court advantage. I needed an attorney, the accountant, human resources, the individuals that, once again, my face man that could go out for me and purchase stuff. Because if you and I go out there, it's another 50%. We're gringos. And so it's not going to happen. I mean, they can see me a mile away. But I lost some innocence on that because I saw some people taking advantage. And I also, being bilingual, there are certain situations, Jamilia, where I would not let some people know initially that I spoke Spanish. Not all the time, and I don't play that game, but it's a good defense. Just to see if certain guys in Boys Town are up to no good and they're saying something bad about me. So I just want to make sure. But yeah, I mean, being an entrepreneur, how about this? I'd rather, loved and lost and not loved and all. What a great ride. And there's so many romantic deaths. You have them every day, from being elated to being depressed. But I tell you what, I'm going to say this. At the end of the day, you're going to be just fine. You'll always have a roof over your head. You always have a full belly. You got a bunch of people that love you to death. You'll never be destitute. And so if we're just gauging it on unrealistic expectations or what society says, and then you're way off. I kind of do the woo way. I don't like resistance. I'll let the wind and the current and gravity take me sometimes. I'll get a little bit of a, on a boat. I'll have the rudder, but I'll allow sometimes things to take me in a certain way and just let things happen naturally. I'll let it glaze over me. I'm not going to avoid the bad thought, or I'm not going to let it fester. But if it's just got to go through me for a little bit and then just go away, it's a healthy thing. Just rake it through, get the rocks out. And it's about a boxer. It's going 15 rounds. Come on, it's about going the distance. You're athletic. You know what it feels like when you get the pain in the legs or in the back and the arms in the gym or when you're running. And as a hockey goalie, my legs would kill me in the third period, but you still got to persevere. And so you find the magic, that 20%, that the only way you could get it is to be on the high seas, in the desert, or in the forest. What gets inside of you to get off that mountain and survive, or as Chuck Wepner did against Ali, go the distance and you become Rocky. And so in order for us to get there, Jamili, we needed to be tested. And I'm sorry what happened to you the other day, but guess what, kiddo? It didn't break you. That's the thing. It didn't break you. And no one bats 1,000. And so I'm glad we hear your successes and you read your bio. It's incredible. But then again, only so many people get to see those tough times when you had to pick yourself back up and look at yourself in the mirror. And I'm so proud of you for that. I hope you make your bed in the morning and you can look at your eyes in the evening and put your head on a pillow and have simple thoughts, because you never really want to have a heavy heart. You always got to eliminate, and we spoke about this before going live on the podcast, eliminating that weight. Because if you can do that, then you're capable of doing almost anything.
I think it's so important for people to hear us talking about the difficult times, right? Like a lot of people get on like, oh yeah, done this, moved to Dubai and, did this and, 10,000. He's like, okay. But what did it take? Like, what did it cost? How did that feel? How many times did you have to get back up? Because I never want anyone to listen to me or read a book or anything and say, oh, it's easy. If anything, I'm telling you it's not easy. I'm telling you it's not easy. I'm telling you it's worth it, but I'm telling you it's not easy. And you're saying it's not easy, but it's worth it. And I think, what you're saying, I mean, what really resonates with me is this idea of the journey and how it makes you and how that's what life is. Like we're not, I mean, yeah, we like yachts, right? Okay. We like champagne, but we're not doing it just for that. We're doing it because it is the exercise, it's the routine, and that's where you build yourself. And for our listeners who are at that critical decision point, whether to stay in their comfortable but unfulfilling jobs or take a leap towards something new and maybe unknown, what would be that final piece of wisdom that you would share with them?
40 hours is part-time, 80 hours is a full-time job, 100 hours you're a beast. And so I think you can dip your toe in the water, still be responsible with your family and your current job, but be bold and be brave. You need to drink life, because the worst thing to do is to regret certain things. I was extremely realistic. Some people say it took too long. I started my business at 35. You want to know why, Jamilia? I'll be honest with you. I was very immature, still am immature, but I also needed to work on my impulse control. So I would have not been the same boss at 25 than at 35. And so sometimes I believe responsibilities need to be done at certain stages of life when you are ready for it.
Now, at the time that you did this, I want to know, because I certainly felt pushback when I moved abroad, and people who are in your familiar circle, your family, your friends. Did anyone say to you, "You're crazy"? Like, why are you doing this?
All day long. But come on, you and I dance in the rain. And we're the first people to walk across the dance floor to ask someone to dance. And then the next thing you know, the 80s movie hits, and it's great. Um, you have to live life as a romantic. You have to see it as a poet, because my good friend, we only get 100 years, and we have to decide what we want to do with this time. And I said it earlier, a lot of us have preset plans. It might seem comfortable at the time, but then again, you're never challenged. And there are some people like my great grandparents that came to the United States at the turn of the 20th century from Eastern Europe. They went to New York City, they were in the garment industry, they learned English, made our money during the Depression. And so when I had to make my argument to my parents in regards to what I wanted to study in my life, I said, think of great grandpa. Seriously, we wouldn't even be here today if it weren't for him. Jamilia, we're nomads. Sometimes it's in our blood. And even though we might be the only person that stands out in this brand new environment, we might be the first that they're meeting. It means all the things in Kentucky and Philadelphia, it doesn't matter now where you're at. And so in essence, you're stripped down to pure essence and your depth, and just to see if you are capable, just in a very basic way, have the ability to communicate with others. And what a game to play.
And people forget, like it's so funny, like when I mention this idea, and you have done this idea, but this idea of building a business abroad, it sounds like the most wild and crazy thing when you raise it to someone. Like, why don't you move to another country and start a business or start something different, right? Do something new. And people are just floored by the idea. But as you mentioned, you know, America was built on that. And then, there's so many different cultures and people around the world that do just that. Every single day, they decide that they want something bigger, better. They want to build legacy for their children. They pick up everything that they know and they take it with them and they go to another country to start something new. And I love, this story about what you did, and particularly the language barrier part, because for many people, language barriers can be intimidating. So how did you face that head on? Right, coming from Philly, you did have some language background, but what really was that process like? Take us through it.
You can't do Duolingo or just study phrases or just listen to passages. I had to do it the old school way. I had to study my grammar for at least 6 months. I had to watch the movies, read the books, sit with people, have coffee, talk in Spanish for a couple hours. And then my junior year, I lived in Spain. So throw me in the deep end. I had to learn how to swim. You can't spin it. You had to learn it. It had to be done. And so for me, it was very easy coming here because I just didn't start a bar or do something at the beach where I just took over something. When I was at my friend's center, I was there for 4 years. So, Jamilia, I learned the business from the inside out, not at sea level. And the call center industry is, it's unique, but there's many different departments. And every time I learned retention and onboarding, human resources, SEO, you name it, it was like a graduate school. So instead of getting a job that might pay me a little bit more that had me stuck, I earned, simple money in Costa Rica just working my friend's center. But the experience I had, as you say, you took it with you. I learned something very unique. I never knew what a call center was. But I learned the number one lesson. People felt expendable. And I heard the gripes. And I realized that when you're in a cubicle making phone calls, it's like a soldier. You really have to extend empathy. And then I made a promise to myself, if I ever get the chance, a 1 in a million shot to start a company, the number one rule I would have is to give people their dignity. And it works. My industry does have a large rotation and attrition and a burnout rate, but that's not the point. There are some people that do this for a career. And so the more that you do quality assurance and you do coaching and you give them shout outs and you listen to what they do to improve on their skills, it's an excellent return on investment for the agents here, especially if you keep improving their English skills, which are soft skills, Jamelia, that they can use outside of the office.
You mentioned empathy, and it's something that I've noticed that we really, as culture, post COVID, everyone's into social media. You get online, people can say what they want, they can say the most offensive things, and then somehow that transfers over in real life. Right, you see it all the time, and particularly when you get into situations when there are cultural differences. What is it about empathy that we're missing these days?
The lack of stimulation. Ever since we moved to work from home compared to on site, I know there's benefits to it. People are saving money, time, and all this stuff, but they're not communicating. If you and I were sitting next to each other, we're high-fiving all day, having pizza at lunch, in the arcade playing air hockey and Pac-Man. You're my best friend. That's how you make the job better. And me today, you tomorrow. And so that got taken away. And so a lot of their lives are done through likes or just omni-channel non-voice like texting, emails, and chat. I'm old school. I like to make phone calls, and these are the sort of things that you're going to miss the tell signs or the moment when you could have been there to congratulate or to console somebody during the best or worst times of their lives. And so we're missing those moments to make best friends or to pick yourself up when you're not feeling well. And so a lot of people use anonymity over the internet, which is fine. It's almost like writing that love letter anonymously. You have the shield, but you can say whatever you want. And that should be done like once in a life to tell a great story. It shouldn't be done all day, every day with everybody, where all you're doing is putting your best picture on Facebook compared to seeing you when you're not having your best day. That's
In
in
real
real
life.
life. That's the real person. And so I'm not saying you should show your worst moments, but then again, when you make yourself vulnerable, Jamelia, then you make yourself even more powerful, and you do know that. And so be selective of who you disclose things to. But if you're willing to trust somebody and share things about you that you're valuing someone's opinion, or you need to check yourself. That's a beautiful thing. Just some people today are just so insecure, and all they want to do is match what other people do. I don't like imitation. I like vibes and energy, because each one of us should not be a print. We should always be a painting. And you know that.
I love that. We should always be a painting. And I think about like these five. So you started out with, training in an existing call center, 5,000 trainees, 5,000
Yes.
people, 5,000
Mm.
paintings, as you would
Oh, yeah.
say, right? It's not a small number. Expanding that to 10,000, how do you not lose that personal touch? I guess, firstly, as in leadership, as you're connecting with the people who you're responsible for, who you basically, in a way, you kind of report to because they're depending on
Hmm.
you, right? But then how do you pass that on to them so that when they're interacting with customers or with anyone really, with each other, that they also copy that energy and they take that on in their roles?
I'm going to break it down two ways for you. When you have a wonderful artist that goes out and sings their heart out every night, it could be 100 times they sang that song, but it could be the first time that you heard it. It's almost like when you interact with someone with the handshake or the autograph, it's a good memory for them. You don't want to ruin your fans and how they admire you. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to earn the respect of the people, because this is my wheelhouse. And so I didn't want to teach profanity or how to lie on the phone. What I wanted to do was to give balance and center and structure. So the first thing we did was, it's like the armor, the shield, and the sword. The first thing, before even stepping on the battlefield, we needed to have the psychology of this. We're not salesmen or saleswomen. I believe, and this is a great mantra, from an educated point of view, someone makes a decision. That should reduce an enormous amount of stress from you to try to force a hand or press an issue. Secondly, there's an adjustment of tone. You very much understand diplomacy and strategy. And so we use the thesaurus to expand on their similes. The best example to give is help. It evokes a defense. It's not the worst word, but I picture someone in quicksand saying, Jamilia, help me. I'd rather, depending on the stage of the relationship, saying assist, guide, and my favorite, lending a hand. Secondly, to readjust the tone is, instead of saying excuse me or I'm sorry, it's Jamilia, for my clarification. Was it A, B, C, or one, two, three? From time to time, my friend, we need to sacrifice pawns. It's okay. You can fall on a sword because your cell phone, your dog, or your kid is making noise. I can't hear you. But I will clean the spill and I'll pay for the bill. So you and I don't get in trouble. We're allowed back. And so sometimes you just got to step up to the plate and do the right thing. So instead of giving people pressure where they're thinking about what's the next rebuttal or quick line to use, no, it's a floating feather. You readjust tones. And my favorite bit of advice is the positive escalation. Your assistant, Sai, is that how you say their name? Who wrote me an email?
That's
Well,
right. Yep. Suye,
see ya.
Suye. Yep.
Okay, well, I'm giving a verbal positive escalation, letting you know that you have an amazing assistant. And so, and that is an incredible thing to do, because most people don't say this and they don't say it on your podcast live. And so I just wanted to make sure that your entire team gets its due, because when I call your company back and I need to speak with you, this individual not only will give me the past that fits and transfer to you, but will tell me your schedule, when an anniversary is coming, or what I can do to keep adding magic to it. And so building a proper pipeline and speaking to the right people, understanding boundaries, knowing their company culture, that's how you, if you want to call it sales, but to me, it's relationship building. And so I'm reducing an enormous amount of pressure and stress and distraction from people that are making carpet bombing calls, or they're doing, we call it desert pitching, where they talk so much there's no oasis or any sort of water in the desert.
Another question. I mean, I think, well, first of all, let me just say, um, the fact that you remember a team member's name and then acknowledge the person. I think that that is rare today. Like going back to the point about empathy, right? Um, yes, there's business. Yes, there's sales. But at the end of the day, all of this is about human connection. I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing from you is that when you strip away the business, you strip away the titles, you strip away all of this, the entity needs to maximize profits and so on and so forth. You're going back to the core principles of how do people hear messages? How do they receive messages? And like the nuances that you mentioned earlier are so tiny grammatically, but make such a huge difference to the listener, right? And I really think a lot of that, I don't know, I may be old school, but I don't know how can we get back to that? Because it seems like so much of that is lost today. And it's nothing, not saying anything bad about today's generation that's coming up, and it's not their fault. They're, thrust into this world of social media. But when you get on the phone with someone or when you're communicating via text like ManyChat, maybe I don't know if your team uses ManyChat where you're working in the DMs and you're communicating with people, how do you still make that person feel nice if they're not listening to you on the phone but you're communicating via text?
Hmm. Well, it depends on the stage of the relationship. For me, some of the suggestions I give to people is to call the balls and the strikes. Seriously, you got to be sometimes forthright with somebody, but not every time. And you might need to cash in your chips. Like if you and I've been working together for 6 months and everything's great, one day I'm gonna be like, Jamilia, come here for a second. Listen, ABC is not one, two, three. But since you respect my opinion, on the down low, I'm telling you as a friend, you'll take it. And sometimes you got to give guilt. Jamelia, come on, you're out of character today. Why don't you say good morning to me? And you're better than this. Come on, I saw 44 the other day. You've only done 12 today. And so your best friends or certain people can be a straight shooter with you. It can't be misinterpreted if you have a luxury of a track record in a relationship, but there is an enormous amount of miscommunication that is done via texting. If you're writing in caps or just one word answers, or the worst thing people say is you're latent. It takes you too long to answer. People find that as a huge insult.
People don't like to be left on red. That's for sure. That's what they call it, being left on red. They don't like that.
But
They
if
do
there's a
not like that.
preventative measure, you go, listen, Richie, I'm going to be busy for the next 3 hours. I'll get back to you at least before the end of business. Then I know. Then I know that at least sometime today you're going to say something. So at least I like tentative. I like things in pencil over pen. And so when I'm making meetings with people, I say, okay, we got a Thursday at 9:30, but it's tentative in case something comes up, we can adjust it so you don't feel like it's a deal maker or deal breaker. So I've had to redo appointments with people before because sometimes things come up. And so, as I mentioned, flexibility is great where everybody can leave something on the table where it's not too much leverage in one direction.
Yeah, for sure. You have to be flexible. Thinking about this idea of like assertiveness, that's also something that I think people need to learn. I just think there's a whole host of communication skills, right? That maybe coming from certain professions, we're not we're not comfortable with, we're not taught. After a while, you learn to be comfortable with being in the center of attention or being assertive or having your voice heard. And I think that that's something people need to learn. How would you suggest that people learn these sorts of communication skills?
Just like your amazing book that you wrote, it's dedicated practice. You just didn't sit down and write a book. You had to write for years prior to your publication. And so anytime you go above and beyond what school asks you or the gym or your friends, obviously you're training for it. You're going to win. And once it becomes habit, you don't even have to think about it at that time. You're almost on autopilot. And so, fine, you might have a phobia of being in front of large groups, and people will give you suggestions about focusing on one person, or if it's face to face, looking in between the eyes. If someone's Medusa, sucking the energy out of you, but if they're positive, look in their eyes. And so, these are little things, and micro expression, reading, and mirror imaging, and all that stuff you've read and seen on TV, and just practice. Dance in the mirror. So then you're ready to go Friday night. I mean, that's the only way to become confident. Look at John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. Half the movie is him practicing before he gets on the disco dance floor. Remember in the beginning of the movie, he was dancing down the street with paint cans. And so if you can live your life dancing down the street with paint cans, listening to the Bee Gees, then you're going to be more than prepared to do anything.